host, Michael Roser. And tonight, folks, we're going to talk about businesses and organizations and their impetus to get into space, and then the implication of exploration, not only for them, but possibly for the common man. Folks, tonight I have with me a very good friend of mine, and of course, you all know exactly who this man is. I have Jared Murphy back again on Dark Hour Paranormal to discuss this topic at hand and lend his insight. Which honestly changed the way I and the esoteric principles that are inlaid into some of these sites. But enough about that. We have talked about it at length, and guess what? You'll hear it again, but we'll format it that way. So, to kind of preface what we're going to get into tonight, Richard Branson, very recently, within the past 4 or 5 days, I think it was 4 days, made his ascent into space with Virgin Galactic, his own company that was designed to do just that. In fact, it was modeled to be something more commercial. And this was the first flight into space. And he actually beat out Jeff Bezos. Yeah, I don't like Jeff Bezos. I don't. And I felt Richard was very warm and sincere. And you saw this child come out within him, this beautifully manicured child that he has nurtured through his experiences. And, well, I mean, let's face it, he has the money to do all of this. But he's given himself a real opportunity. And hopefully, within his words, he's telling us that he will afford us the same opportunity at some point. So without further ado, folks, I'm going to bring on my good friend, Jared Murphy. Jared, how you doing tonight? And just to let everybody know, there is a lag, so we're going to try and compensate for that. So if it's a little awkward at times, we're aware. Just work with us. It'll be better than last night's technical difficulties, I promise.
I got to tell you, I think there's less lag. I don't know why, but it was pretty bad over I don't know if everyone else could hear over the opener, but you were cutting out. So I don't know if you were just cutting out for me, or I will say it was a little choppy, and I think some of your intro was missed.
Probably. That's usually what happens here. Yep.
Okay. Well, no, every time we've done a show together, which for everyone listening, we are going to be doing more shows together. We've been, I think, very busy since America's Stonehenge. We're planning more expeditions, but on that note, I mean, I think that it's been pretty clear you've never cut out during the intro bumper ever.
With all the storms that we've had, this inclement weather that's been rolling through these severe cells over here in the Northeast, it may play a part in the last few days of these internet difficulties. But again, I'm just surmising. It's sort of a case that I see repeat itself as time goes on. But Jared, can you speak a little bit closer to the microphone, or if you have the ability to kind of pump the volume up maybe another notch or two? People in the chat are saying you're a little low.
I noticed StreamYard has another setting for. Whoa. How about now?
You sound the same to me. Guys in the chat, let me know if you can hear Jared a little bit better here, and we'll get this sorted
How
on.
How about now?
Can you hear me now? Remember those commercials?
Is it better, or am I still talking to the wind? I think everything's set correctly, but if it's not, what do you think? Is it still coming in as quiet?
Okay. Well.
Okay, hold on.
He's been loud enough for me, so I don't know. Long Island Bigfoot said you're loud. Sephora says yes, you're good. F Graph says
Sephora.
Tad better.
A tad better. It's a wee bit. So
Kingfish says Jared is fuzzy. I mean, I don't know. I was going to make a joke. Sorry.
Now, you're not referring to furries, right? So what I have right now, I run through a Scarlet interface for anyone geeking out. Oh wait, is it better? Or is the delay on my humor on Furbies?
They say you sound better.
Okay. Yeah, I'm using the same setup I always do, but I noticed.
Okay. Well,
I will.
Let's.
I was
Yep,
going to
go
ask
ahead.
you a question about StreamYard.
Good God, huh? This is always an adventure.
Am I gone?
It's my gorgeous internet. I'm looking at the router and things blinking red. Anyway, okay, let's let's not spend too much time on this one here. We're gonna work with what we've
No.
got, Jared. If I by
Okay.
chance drop out, dude, just hang tight. I'll be right back in if it comes to pass. All right, can you hear me all right?
Yeah. Yeah, well, I can hear you just fine. You're starting to get a little choppy visually, but the audio's good. And I was just wondering if I noticed an advanced setting on StreamYard for mic, and I was wondering if that had anything to do with my setting change. I haven't changed it, but it seems to be set by default rather low. And I don't know if you have control over that, if that's a thing, if there's a microphone volume control on your end. But if the show must go on and we must not delve into that too far, that I will just ask you now.
I do not have it, but here,
Does it sound good now?
you sound fine now. You actually sound much better. Hang tight.
Okay.
Yes, you sound actually much better now. Hang
right.
tight for a second, Jared. If you want to just kind of introduce yourself to some of the people here, we have some new folks. I'm just going to reset this real quick, and I'll be right back, okay? Hey, Long Island Bigfoot, thank you for the $3 super sticker.
Oh,
I see
yeah.
it. Good Lord, I click on it, and it's still not up on the screen. Okay, I'm going to, I'll revisit that in a moment, and I'll be right back. All right, I'll be right back.
Okay, so I'm doing the intro. So, for those that don't know me, I wrote a book called It's Not Aliens, Worse It's Us, Discovering Our Lost History. And we're all very aware now of a missing advanced human population that was on the planet. And my book and research started with Terra Preta, which is an ancient engineered soil. It's not just in Brazil. They found it in northern South America, Central America. They found the identical soil in North Africa. It's in Australia. And what I basically did was put together a book over 4 years that includes information that says a worldwide, very advanced human society was terraforming the planet down to engineering the soil, not just for growing, but for communication and also for connecting the buildings, the giant polygonal construction. And from there, we have giant things like pyramids, polygonal walls like Ollantaytambo, Sacsayhuaman, Angkor Wat, whether it's Europe or Malta or Sardinia or weird dolmens and standing stones. The reality is that there's a lot of things that don't add up. But what is interesting is that when you start tabling all the facts from the Reese map, math in ancient Sumeria to India as far as pi, the use of an eigenvalue. So I spent a lot of time doing a lot of research, not just over the last 5 years. I was in South Africa just almost a year and a half ago now, and I do field research. I do experimentation, including aeroponics, and that's, of course, for all you jokers out there, that is not for pot. That is for growing food with direct nutrients from water directly to a root system. So there's a lot of different layers, including Wim Hof and superhuman abilities. And when you table all the different abilities and weird anomalies from engineered soil to the polygonal buildings on every continent, and then the timeline is off for ancient America and the rest of the world, in that a lot of what we're looking for is underwater and not by like a few 100 feet. But anyway, I host shows on notaliens.com. On Not Aliens, I put premieres out on my YouTube channel. I'm sure Michael would tell you to subscribe. Please do. And then from there, Michael and I do a show. We've been to America's Stonehenge recently together. I gave a lecture there. And so it's continued research into this missing lost human world that did exist prior to what we think is now the most advanced period in humanity. And there's likely remnants of that population left, which we talk about from time to time as the UFOs you all see. But right now, we were going to have a conversation about Richard Branson and assorted other things And we dig very far down the rabbit hole, from things that are described as paranormal to things that we think maybe are UFO that might be really ancient advanced humans. And we cover the gamut. I continue to write and, again, produce shows also on Rockfin and my Not Aliens channel on YouTube, notaliens.com. And here we go. You're back.
Jared, thank you very much for holding it down. And now that I've reset everything that I could possibly reset, I think we'll have a smoother time here for at least a little while. I'm crossing my fingers.
Hold it.
Yeah, that's fine. Seeing people work with in many different ways. And believe me, Branson is not the first. Obviously, Bezos is not the first. Elon Musk is not the first. These are just the guys that have the money to do it. Recently there were some people trying to make these homemade crafts to get up there into the sky and a little bit higher into the atmosphere. And for most of them. But that being said, look, here's one thing I want to kind of bring up to really get this kicked off here. How many different ways have we proposed to get ourselves into space out of the things that are happening currently? One particular construct that comes to mind. Look at this. As I remembered, I guess it's been developed a little bit more in respect to the theory and possibility. Again, it just requires money. But do you remember the space elevator? Do you remember when people started talking about this? All right. Now, for those of you who are not familiar, it's essentially an elevator that sticks straight up Earth, miles into the air, wherein they're thinking about using as a docking station, multiple uses for this particular construct. They were other ways that have been proposed that you'd like to bring up to get us into space, not necessarily through NASA or through the government.
Well, I hate to tell you, but you cut out for most of the last sentence. So I heard space elevator, go into space. What other ways is where I heard again. What other ways to... Was that the question? Essentially, yes. So what are your thoughts on the space elevator construct versus the way we're getting into space now through, these privatized organizations creating spacecraft to get there? And yes, what are the other ways that we may have gotten or proposed to get into space on that, as the common man? Even if you, and for all those listening, I'm guessing there's a slight bias. However, I am going to right now recommend that you all read a late 1980s sci-fi, possibly one of the greatest sci-fi trilogies ever written, Old Man's War, because they discuss a space elevator that goes to a space station. And the whole premise around it that's so bananas is you have to continue to sync the space station and the elevator so that they don't tear each other apart as the Earth spins. So the technology to get a space elevator to space is quite challenging, to get it to connect to something that doesn't actually end up spinning at a different speed than the planetary surface. So it's quite a weird, the idea of a space elevator is quite a funny thing. It's neat, but the idea of private industry doing something that everyone has a conspiracy about, why did NASA not go back to the moon? Like, if we're at the moon, why wouldn't we continue to build bigger and better at the moon? Why not already have a small city there? And there's a lot of conjecture about where did NASA put their money if it wasn't into the space program. And I do think there's been a lot of positive developments, but what's the difference between any government and private industry? Well, they tend to find how they just process differently in a way that's profitable. And guys, whisper. It's a whisper. Did you say a whisper?
Was that it? I'm sorry. I don't know if you cut out or not. Jesus.
Yeah, no, I can't tell him. So it looks like Dark Hour is going to continue to struggle with the dark side of the net. So we're going to keep talking. So I do think that Branson's plan to get up in there and make it commercialized, I mean, right away in this interim period, I think we should all be slightly bummed that we don't have hundreds of thousands of dollars for a ticket. So there's just that practical side of it, which is a bummer. And we could talk about what's going to happen when it's practical again to go to space for, less than 100 grand, which is, we're very far away from that. But then you have competing companies, and irrelevant to how you feel about Amazon, whoever is the competing companies, I think it's important that there is competition and a drive to get to space as a commercial vehicle, because for instance, for right now, militaries and governments alone seem to be the only ones, and governments, I mean, every government is in control of a satellite program. And what I mean by that is that even if you're relying on your cell phone service or your internet or the things that we're using now, all of that is still approved. You don't get the satellite without your sending government having the blueprint and access. There's not a privacy thing there.
Mm-hmm.
So how's your audio? Are you back?
I hope
Kinda.
so. I hope you can hear me. Everything looks okay on this side, but I keep seeing the lag. But that being said, here, let me get in this question. As long as it sounds okay on your end, we'll keep moving forward. So let me ask you this question. We are quickly moving towards the colonization of these planets in our immediate galaxy. What might be the advantage to living on the moon or Mars other than we aren't destroying Earth with our presence anymore? What benefit is it to any of us to do this?
Well, for those up for a land grab, that's the difference between a modern and an ancient, more simplex human society moving into anywhere. The development of the land is going to be to maybe a personal advantage to your personal pleasure, but the advantages of expanding is there's always new technologies that come with the need for innovation from problems. Every planet has a problem, and one of the first ones that everybody points out about going to Mars, in fact, it's not always pointed out, but in fact, I think it was one of your listeners, and on another, it's pretty important, is the harmonic that our planet is at, the frequency that it rings at, the Schumann resonance. So we have a problem, is that our cellular system is not set to sustain itself on Mars or other planets. So we keep looking at the effects of astronauts in space or in the space station for like a year or 2 years or whatever the record is right now. I believe it's a cosmonaut. But the issues are bone density loss, muscles. There is, oh, there we go. Agenda. Yeah. Jared, is this just the realization of Bridenstine's commercialized low Earth orbit agenda at NASA? Now, that I don't know the name. So I love when people bring things up that I don't know anything about. And so thank you for the super chat, Area 503. This, I think that commercializing is always about opportunity. I mean, a lot of people would just be happy to say they've been to space, right? So just to go up and go around, and even if it's a short trip or a short ride, there are people willing to spend money without maybe even circling the Earth. They're willing to go up and they're willing to come down. And that's very primitive, I think, because I think all of us want Star Wars or Star Trek or pick your sci-fi. We want to go stay at the cabin at the Airbnb on the moon, or at a minimum, hit a space lock and stay in a commercialized, like you said, maybe a low orbit space station that can say it's in space, but you get to say you were there. And then again, it always comes down to volume and cost, right? So the first, unless there has been, so unless there's this advancement in, I mean, the first practical things about it is, can they produce something that can go to orbit, be built? Like any contracting situation, as a design build contractor, when I put on that hat, I'm looking at how can I get the cost of material and then get it to space and build it in a reasonable cost factor, and then make it safe, of course. And I know a lot of people can be cynical about whether or not it'd be safe, but you have to get the material up there. You have to build the complex. And what does that mean? you need to do it for more than 50 or 100 people. Think of your average hotel, even the simplest Motel 6 or Holiday Inn Express, or pick a hotel chain where they have bargain rooms that are still like 60, 90, $150 for a night. They aren't less than a couple hundred rooms generally. They're in the 200s to 300s for the number of rooms.
But
So
what you're
what does
talking
this,
about here is you, I was gonna say, and I'm sorry, I know this lag is absolutely killing shit, but the commercial base in still on Earth. Our home base still on Earth, and we're gonna go out there. We're gonna go on vacation, and then we're gonna come back, and maybe not to
I think, yeah, I think,
space. Now there are many of us who search and go ahead.
well, no, if that was a partial question, you should keep going. Otherwise, it could speculate on how I think we're going to expand out and colonize. I don't know how far the leg
thing
is.
it's about colonization, I think, in my opinion, rather than really commercialization. What these things that are on the table right now with, Richard Branson and Jeff Bezos trying to create something that is accessible for some people here to just have this sort of joyride, I think it's just a very light introduction. And you bring and some, I think it's costing for wow, we're looking at some serious lag here, guys. My God, I don't think I've ever seen anything like this.
I'm so sorry. I haven't heard anything you've said. I heard the commercialization, I heard you preface with the, can you hear me fine? I guess if you could nod on that one.
I can hear you just fine. I can hear you perfectly.
I'm so sorry, man. I heard the part. I could hear you start about saying, "Hey, we're gonna," like the initial jump into space with Jeff Bezos and Branson just going up quick, and then what does that immediate future look like? And it looks like very wealthy people going up into space for a little bit, really quick, maybe in orbit, and then can these men, Branson, or if you look at the longevity of humanity, I mean, there is some very hitting the horizon about humans living into their 150s. And I do think this is very much Ray Kurzweil singularity is near stuff. If we hit the 150s, we could probably live indefinitely, because at this point we're talking about cellular level repair. So is it possible, though, within current lifetime for either Richard Branson or Jeff Bezos to move into a second phase where there is either a space hotel or something gets done commercially and privately on the moon? I think it's going to be possible. The question is, one of the neat playouts in all this, okay, I know it's neat. For some, it might cause a lot of stress and anxiety, but the question is whether or not the big five, for those that aren't getting history lessons anymore, that would be China, Russia, the United States, America, Japan, and the assorted, we have a collection now at the UN, but think more post-World War II. But are these superpowers, and there are new superpowers, new nuclear powers, India, of course, and others, but France and, the NATO. So the question is, are they going to allow or be comfortable with privatization of which the irony is that a lot of our war now, Halliburton type companies, there's a lot of privatization of basically conflict areas. So whether it's rebuilding or supplying a military or rebuilding after a war or conflict happens, there are large corporations that are very much privately maintained now to manage what otherwise was a completely governmental military operation. So would they be comfortable with, it sounds hilarious, but Holiday Inn opening their first hotel on the moon, and even if it could only accommodate 10 people, and even if it was really just like a stunt, and billions of dollars later, if they could create a research facility that they call a hotel, that, however the gimmick works, but the reality is building in the rooms and building in the space and getting us there. A real hotel? Are we within being able to visit the moon within the next 50 years? And that is going to take some serious aggressive planning by people who are motivated to do it. And whether it is Richard Branson or whether it's Jeff Bezos or someone else, or a Russian oligarch, or someone from China, it doesn't matter, or Japan. I mean, anywhere that there's anyone that have the kind of composition of the money and the influence, is it possible for someone who's individually dreaming to, obviously the no-brainer is Tesla, and that there is this Elon is more than, I think, going on this direction, but suicide missions to Mars aren't going to ultimately push not going to get us closer to the goal. And what we learn as we move out, whether it's just orbital, low orbit fun stations, and then higher orbit or the moon, and then when we do get to Mars, the Schumann resonance, the issues with our frequencies of our bodies, what technology gets developed that harmonizes, I think, as we get better and reverse engineering, whether we're using ultrasound to kill cancer, or whether we're really reverse engineering these polygonal constructions that are already here on the planet, there is a possibility that we could understand the technologies so that we can actually stay long term and not turn into jello, right? So that's the problem. Do we turn into jello when we get to Mars or a moon and we set up a base? It's like, no matter
absolutely.
what.
And that's,
yeah.
Well, they've developed these different exercises, excuse me, recently, from what I understand, that actually within the program, I guess some of these astronauts are coming back stronger than when they left. So I think they've tackled that to some degree, which is actually quite fascinating when I found that out. Let me ask you this. It seems that I'm getting moments of clarity here in respect to the technology. So while I'm well enough for you to hear, could the exploration, and this is sort of what you were talking about a little bit, but if you want to expound upon it in respect to the question, could the exploration of space be the unifying element for humanity? If no one can ever own space, and there are so many independent privatized interests in the exploration of such, what might things look like on Earth in the next 40 or 50 years?
The one thing I want to dispel right away is they always make it look like Earth is going to piss and anywhere will be better because we've destroyed the planet. And it always comes with this completely unfounded, unfactual playbook that has mysteriously disappeared that said there should be 50,000 bison, 4 billion mosquitoes, and 80 trillion trees. There's this idea that the planet has a history where at one point it was just this random blob of lava, fires, tsunamis. What's the perfect playbook when you think about it? Pangea. People have this idea. We're still discovering. I want to remind everyone this. We're discovering up to 3,000 to 5,000 species a year. Granted, many of them are bacteria and fungus and viruses, but there's also bats, fish, birds, crap we thought was extinct, the giant otter that was just found in Amazon. There are so many things that are on this planet that we don't even are aware of. And many of them, again, tie into an ancient human society that may have been terraforming this planet. So when we say we're ruining the earth, we don't even entirely understand the parameters of what are we or are we not ruining. So when we take the entire 8 billion people on this planet and give them all an acre, they still fit in about 2.5 Texases or about 3 South Africas. That's how unpopulated this planet is. We have all the food that we need to feed everyone on the planet just here in America. So we're not going to run out of land to feed people. And aeroponics was developed by NASA. I was fascinated. It was in the 70s. They tried to resolve how are we going to get to Mars with food? Well, if you only have to carry water and atomize it and feed plants, the nutrients that you can feed plants through just water and no soil is significant. You can increase the number of minerals that the plant receives. Their grow times exceed by 300 to 500%. But they were already resolving not growing plants in the ground, doing it through not hydroponics, but atomized water. So you're just like those spritzers that are at bars when you're outside in the summer. People might experience getting wet, but it immediately evaporates, and that's because the water's been atomized down to 30 to 50 microns. So we get to nerd out about numbers. I will tell you, in the future, we're going to learn about microns. We're going to learn about so many nerdy little things that we didn't want to know about the sizes of. But I want to keep an eye on dispelling this idea that Earth had a playbook that involved a 500 million humans, and that's it, and a bunch of random wildlife out of a Disney movie running around. And that was what the Earth looked like at some point. That's what it should look like. So this dystopian outlook, or this hubris that, we have to get off the planet to keep it a giant bonsai garden, is ludicrous. And it's not from the ruins we're finding, and not the ruins that were adapted by dynastic people, but the oldest ruins on this entire globe indicate a manicured, indicate a managed planet that had green space, that had enough space for more than the people that are here. So as we leave and go somewhere else, who's going to tell, no matter what religion, race, or where you're from, we've had enough movies out to explain how dangerous space is. So is it more likely that when you're in a team and you get to whatever moon around, whether it's another one of our planets in the solar system, and you're at one of the moons, or you're at Mars itself, or you're at the moon, or a moving space station that is actually maybe call it another planet in our system. Maybe we get very ambitious and we build something much larger that can support thousands or tens of thousands. But either way, we're talking about a community that, if they do not do their jobs, they may all die. So I do think that certain traditions, politics, all have to be set aside when you are in space. And at the same time, an unoccupied planet with millions of square miles of empty space, who can argue about who owns what? I mean, if possession is 9/10 of the law, but then how do you transport all that? I can't get my head around any other way than being a cooperative collective. And I can't help but be optimistic. Okay, I'm not being naive, but that cooperative intentions and that cooperative procedures to get things to and from these planets and moons and bases would not bleed back to a planet that, as we continue to discover and rescue our past, would be more humble about what they perceive as the right religion, right politics. I think it'll be less and less relevant. You can keep your faiths, you can keep your personal opinions,
right?
But I think as we move out and as the human population expands, there's no way it doesn't get, for a period, more cooperative. So the question is, when does it become uncooperative? And I think that
it would have to, and in any undertaking like that, yeah. Well,
but well established.
Well, that's the question. That's the question, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, and I think that the fun part in being in, where are you in the, are you coming from the Dark Ages into the Renaissance? Are you already in the Renaissance and experiencing just kind of the day-to-day of it being the Renaissance is a success? Are you part of the people taming the wild frontiers of the West of the United States? And the West was just going to the Mississippi, not even crossing it. are you part of establishing what will be America, or are you, you know, the idea, what period of history do you want to take a snapshot of? Is it the fall of Rome? Is it the rise of Rome? Is it the rise of the Greeks? Is it this mysterious world of the Etruscans and Tartaria that we know nothing about, that seems to have influenced Greece and Rome? Where in your histories, in the last 6,000 years, and all this post Younger Dryas stuff, do you pick a society and say, well, one day we're going to turn that into a solar system empire. We're going to turn it into a small interplanetary empire. And does it stay cohesive? And part of the answer to that, I think, does fall back on, I mentioned Ray Kurzweil earlier, the singularity. And I think part of it does fall back on the longevity of an individual human being and what can you accomplish. That's the weird, mind-blowing part. I think that when someone looks at their life, they have these phases: high school, college. They have these periods where they're productive, unproductive. And what does a human being produce in 150 years? Or if it is indefinite, do they become more productive, or do they become lazier? And is it a curve with the, when you have your eyes on, I have a realistic ability to hop on in, Virgin Galactic, and I have the
Mhm.
ability to do a 5-year tour of a mining colony that's establishing a refinery in order to build a larger complex city on Mars, or mine it out, or live underground and develop, whatever it is. You can see where I think that as we expand our lifetime, and that's the other thing, I think there's medical advances here on Earth that don't take place because we think we're very primitive, I think, in how we approach the human population, that we, one, can feed and care and allow the planet to flourish. But I think that if we knew we were sending thousands of people out to potential rough spots, and God forbid, there will be some failures there, I do think that moving people out of the planet and outward, people might shift their paradigm on this very primitive, there should only be 500,000 people on the planet. There should only be,
They
you know,
they would, though. They absolutely
yeah,
would. I mean, I think that
yeah,
they're going to do this new frontier. I think that's natural, and we've seen it in other circumstances and examples as well. Bringing it back to the merging of humanity, or this unifying element, I think what you're saying resonates with what my feelings are. That, by and large, if for no other reason, it would be a byproduct that we would have to be cooperative in respect to doing this. Because let's put it this way, wherein, if you wanted to take a walk over to Alaska from where you live in Central America, I'm sorry,
yeah.
where are you? Midwest, right? Consider Midwest America. Either
No,
way,
yeah,
for
I'm
the
in Minnesota.
example, okay. So, different. It takes a cooperative, collaborative to get anybody into those upper atmospheres. So again,
Yeah.
no one person is doing this alone. We talked a little bit about the fuel, but let me ask you this: if space travel is available for the layman in the near future, how will this affect the cost of fuel to propel these Newtonian-based crafts, given the fact that they're trying to phase out gasoline vehicles on the roads by the next 10, 15 years? What's this going to look like? And, on a commercial scale, how much would that, cost? Where would that money come from? Where would the fuel come
So,
from if they were still doing that?
so I think one of the biggest problems with this is a very long conversation, or it could be a very short one for everyone to have some fun with on a Friday night. But here's the topic. We could spend the rest of the night discussing all the conspiracies around the people who have developed water, hydrogen, the accelerating sail project that I just saw in Veritasium, uh, which I know has been out for like 3 years or longer. But there are so many free or almost zero cost methods of energy propulsion where the inventors have either disappeared or been silenced, or products have been bought, stuff has been thrown in rivers. The reality is that the ability for us to have either a free or low emissions or zero emission, more natural propulsion method, I think we've been there for many, many years. So if in freak economics, I see
Yeah.
the corporations. Here's what I see the profits shifting, where the greed is no longer on. We need to create products that fail, like the light bulb. You know, it needs to have an end life. You can't. Well, ironically, I have uh, LEDs behind me. Uh, Now we have light bulbs that apparently will be almost indefinite. We have the oldest light bulb in the world. It's been on for 150 years and it hasn't died. And light bulb companies literally got together and said, we need to make products that fail. And that has been perpetuated into every industry. There are some large corporations that have gotten in trouble for it. So that's the mindset, that the only way to make money, and I bring it up because globally the story is, well, we need to keep creating profit, and the way to do that is to make you want to change out the product you just bought for something new. And I think that starts to go away a little bit when you go to
Mhm.
space. The reason is the same companies can be commissioned by global government. And again, whole other dialogue, but just accept it, not good or bad or dystopian, but just global governments, individual, if you want to label it as such, will have to pay for the products that keep you safe in space, but also basically like the FAA controls every nut and bolt, like every nut and bolt. You can't just, hey, there's one rivet loose on this plane. Every part on a plane is passes an actual inspection, not only when they decide to approve it for production, but they actually do it for repair. And I know this firsthand. But the space travel is going to have the same type of elements where, you know, everything is going to have a certain cost to it, but when you're getting a volume of people into space, I think the profits shift. So it's like, hey, you know, do we need to worry about really cutting out fossil fuels when we already have a bunch of free methods and really great energy? You know, there's a lot of great energy possibilities that if we weren't suppressing them, we could free up capital to create more ships
Right.
to go right. So I don't think the profits go down for these large corporations. It gets more exciting, and I want to show them the bait and switch of it, or the freak economics, because I think there are a lot of guys that are like just looking at the bottom line. Futures come up. I mean, the world of trading and etc. But they're not going to not make money if suddenly everyone, you know, in 50 years goes to the grocery store literally for free. That there's no cost to lighting, there's no cost to water.
Mm.
Um, Work. I mean, Israel came up with a way to convert the most efficient, I think to this day, the most efficient mass water conversion of salt water into fresh drinking water is in Israel. And the only point is necessity and invention. And we aren't even able to table how many different weird, unique, microscopic products. And for those of you out there that are like, you know, and I have no career, I always wanted to be an inventor. In 20 years or 30 years, you could literally just in the next few years, as you're watching these galactic flights, you could just imagine a really tiny product that would be really great for any passenger on a space flight. And and this is just one example. And you could patent that, whatever it is. It might even be a product that, of course, it
Mhm.
could be used on a plane on the way to your vacation to go to the beach. But what I'm saying is that the innovations and the necessities to go into space for the traveler, along with their safety, along with the flights itself, and then the locations and destinations, it's not a matter of just a DIY decorating with your average stuff. I think the technologies, you know, imagine you don't want to sleep in a hotel that, and even though you're in space and it's fully climate controlled, or you're in a giant underground city or something to that effect on Mars, imagine, well, you know, when the emergency cooling system had to start, the only sheets to be under are Patagonia. You know, and I'm not saying that because I mean sponsored by Pat. You know what I mean, though. It could be North Face comforters, and you know, if you're gonna walk on the moon, it better be Nike or Adidas, or you know, it's going to turn into that kind of brand war. And the heroes behind that might be the astronauts and the people who go there. It could be very bizarre. It could be, the first think of the first musician that decides to do a concert on Mars or on the moon, or, that you can go to, that you're going to go to a party and or concert event on the moon. I mean, there
That's
are
the
a lot
thing.
of, yeah, there's a lot of firsts.
That's Yeah, no, exactly. That's the thing. And oh, dude, it's all chock full of firsts. I mean, just getting up there first as an individual, somebody who hasn't gone through a program like NASA or something like that. Well, that
Yeah.
kind of brings me to my next question, in respect to what it might take here. I mean, Badala mentioned that she attempted to become an astronaut through more conventional avenues, but that she was rejected because of her poor eyesight. How will this accessibility to space affect the industry at large when it comes to a certain specifications or set of specifications, health, mental wise, needed to withstand a trip into space, or are these stipulations really unnecessary?
I think they're quickly going to get unnecessary. I mean, I do not know Richard Branson. The man appears to be very fit, and there are many possibilities for you to stay indefinitely fit. There are, there's YouTube videos of 90-plus-year-olds doing handstands
Well,
and gymnastics. So, could you be blind or
but it's
deaf
something
and
as
still
simple as,
exist?
if you ever smoked a cigarette in your life, you weren't allowed to go into space if you were going through NASA. If you smoked one cigarette, took one puff of tobacco, you were automatically disqualified from the program. I always thought that was a little extreme. So that's
I think
kind of
it
what I'm looking
was.
at in respect to some of these things. Yeah.
No, I think you're totally right. They are extreme. But we didn't know. It's very interesting. Even the last year is a good example of how far away you can get from the reality of science. And, belief is different than wisdom and science and facts. And so when you are going to go to space for NASA in the 60s and 70s, it's your very first time, and it's literally a lot of money. And so if we, with our
Yeah.
own discretion, can rule out every genetic anomaly and pick from a dwindling, like if they can really narrow down, and there's the irony. I mean, you've seen pictures of the ground crew and everyone in the 60s I mean, people were smoking everywhere. So secondhand smoke, it's a joke. The idea of you've never smoked. Who hadn't smoked in the 60s? Whether you smoked or not, if you walk to a diner, a restaurant, a movie theater, a hospital,
It's true.
your doctor smoked, like straight out of Mad Men. I mean, it's there. My grandfather, World War II tank commander. The reality is the man smoked 5 packs a day, and I couldn't even breathe in the house after we'd go visit him after 5 or 6 hours. And it's just not realistic that those people weren't.
Good Lord.
But which is great. It's like Area 503. It's just, he's totally right, or they are totally right. The best of the best.
I
But
like
look
this.
at I was
Yeah.
about to bring
Makes
up the,
sense.
if you bring up black and white, you don't have to do it now. But if you guys go looking at the black and white photos of like the NASA teams and the offices, and if you go look at period photographs, they're smoking. So it's not like they were just not
Yeah, I would
smoking.
bring it up too, but I'm not tempting fate tonight.
Right. So all I'm saying, yeah, don't. But so the idea of extreme, like, hey, you looked at somebody who was sick, that's just not realistic. Well, but here's the thing that we're not taking into account now. We're not looking for Buzz Aldrins here. We're looking for people who can sit and be a passenger. And okay. So I'll share something with you. For those of you who don't know a lot about the under cargo area of a airplane where they stick all your cargo, well, one, it's not heated, it's not cooled, it's just whatever the atmosphere is. When you get up 4 or 5 miles, your plane, when you're at 30, 35, 38, whatever thousand feet, if there's ever a fire, I have it on good knowledge from I have multiple friends and family that are airplane mechanics, and they call it the puppy killer. So I love dogs, don't get me wrong, but just so you know, if there's ever a fire in the underbelly where all your luggage is, well, all they do is evac the air. But that's also where they keep the pets. So they call it the puppy killer. And why is that relevant if you were bringing 5 to 20 uh, never before gone into space, untrained, not athletic passengers? What do you think the disposable section of the cargo area is going to look like now? You know, what is the safety protocols to get
That's a
highly, think about it, highly trained astronauts who are professionally flying passengers who, although have a lot of money, and I'm sure they'll make sure that, look, the fact is they'll design these planes that for the hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars being spent to be a passenger, your likelihood of dying, except on extreme failure, is unlikely. But I kind of picture the passenger section as the puppy killer cargo area, where like if anything goes wrong, it's like, don't lose the multi-billion dollar trained pilots who we need for another indefinite period of their lifespan. We need them, but we don't need the passengers. See what I'm saying?
I do see exactly what you're saying here. That's that's a very interesting analogy. But with all the commercial airlines that go out daily, I mean, there's a
Yeah.
percentage that do crash, and of course, this is still something that happens. So I would likely put calamity in way of tragedy in the exploration and the forging of this new frontier as we move forward, which is really unfortunate, but it's the price of progress in respect to anything empirical in way of study. Do you think they'll eventually be able to send people into space en masse where they have some sort of like a very large containment, all right, sort of akin to a bus that holds or carries space at a time, some sort of carrier service for folks? Or do you think this is going to be more individualized? There's 6, 10 people that are able to go up in these smaller crafts. Where do you see that headed?
Well, I think the popularity of, I don't think it would just be, I think there's a novelty to saying, hey, I was one of the first, I just went to space. Like, just to be able to say it, I went to space. I did the rocket ship around the earth, and that's, you get to tell everyone. But then there are a segment of the population that are gonna be like, okay, I already did that, or enough people have done it. It's not very new. It's kind of like bungee jumping, skydiving, or zip lining. It's on a bucket list, and some people get into it. I have a friend who has closer to 4,000 jumps than 3, and he loves to jump. But there are other people who just want to try it once. So the question is, how many people, once you get up in orbit, well, it's like, okay, I've been in orbit, but it's not like I'm staying here, right? So then if they develop a commercial hotel slash
Right.
resort, basically a cruise ship in space, uh, what does that look like then? How many people can go to it? And then, I mean, here's the argument. Here's what's interesting. Let's just look at this in the next 50 years. Let's just say that a group of investors from multiple countries get it up. Well, one, that whether it's NATO or the agreements already between NASA and Moscow are really brilliant as far as, I mean, the Russians have been getting most of all of the stuff we need to get into space. They have not stopped. They've been going at it better and longer now for, unfortunately, an arguable period of time, at least commercially and publicly from what we all see. Okay, so for everyone, we're gonna have to stay away from the military secret, triangle UFO. We have to stay away from that right now. So all the governments might be equal on the secret program, but commercially, we know the Russians are contracted. A lot of the stuff that goes to the space station, the way we bring up astronauts, and now China's going to space, Japan's getting it down. So the reality is, what does it look like to have a giant space hotel where, first and foremost, legit military powers may or may not run into a problem on their experimental, like right now the space station just keeps doing its thing. So the irony is, what if we keep having like 20, 30, 50 person space stations within the next 50 years, right? But then we have a 2 or 3 or 400 person with staff hotel, right? Who gets priority if something happens on the military space trips? They have an automatic priority to dock and show up and say, look, yeah, you're putting us up for the night, right? And granted, we'll pay our bill, but you're going to let the 20 emergency ejected astronauts from the space station, head there first. And then when you think about it, even if it's a private venture and it's open to the public, well, what happens if you have one venture capitalist group in France and one group in America and one group in Russia and or China? When you have 200 rooms and the venture capital groups and their private equity firms say, well, based on percentage of ownership, we're going to send, let's just say 100 of the 200 rooms have to come from France. And then everyone else and 60 from Moscow, and the splits between the US and China for 20. And that's not from governments, that's from private equity firms. And suddenly you have somebody on some news organization saying it's not fair that 100 French people get to go and only 20 Americans. And you know what I mean? You see the potential public view of, and no matter what, everyone's like, well,
right.
everyone else,
right.
All 200 people up there are worth like $500 billion. So some people might look at it and just say, hey, look, none of us are going to get there anyway. On the other hand, I could see it being politicized. It would be exciting, but then it could be politicized, but maybe not. So there's the logistics of sharing something that large in space. And if governments lay their hands off, like any other shipping company, any other train business, any other mining company that has all the individual government contracts it has, like any other organization. So yeah, might be backed by a government, but again, if they have free autonomy to build what they want and contracts are awarded by either not lottery but by application, whether it's NASA overseeing it or another or international organization, but if ultimately building permits are given, or if space is like the ocean, an open frontier, then there are no permits. There's just XYZ human being, corporation, fill in the blank, spiritual organization could decide we are building our new Garden of Eden. We're literally, there's a whole nother direction of building something in space that could then be independent. And so we're also looking at the first time. Think about it. I mean, if we're capable of building a space in space that could support a life cycle, like in other words, could enough people with enough genetic information and incubus grow a human population, whether in transit to Mars or somewhere, or could some people opt out of living on the planet? I mean, that's a whole other subject of what if there are people who just want to live in the cabin in space and get supplies dropped off by Amazon?
Well, they are already with Mars.
Well, I mean, there's a Tesla orbiting the planet right now, right?
Yeah, they are already with Mars.
Are they?
Yes, is from what I understand. You know what? I'm gonna read something here very quickly. As long as you can hear me. If you can't, just stop me because I'm watching my internet act up here. But in this article that I was reading on www.today.com, it had said Branson is also trying to open space travel to more than just the wealthy. Virgin Galactic has announced it has partnered with the fundraising platform Omaze to launch a sweepstakes to give away 2 tickets on a Virgin Galactic space flight expected to launch next year. I have to tell you, this was a really comical statement to me, because the follow-up to, oh, this is going to be something accessible to people at large. Oh, by the way, there's a contest that you can enter, and there's 2 free seats. That's it. I mean, I don't know if they've thought this through. Really, I think they're putting forth a lot of optimism in way of what they're presenting, and again, I don't know how based in reality it is in respect to what we'll see in our lifetime. Will you and I, Jared, have the opportunity to go to space for less than $250,000, which is the asking price today? I really don't know. I mean, is this really just a luxury only for the wealthy, or do you think we'll actually have something more attainable in the way of being able to do this working a 9 to 5?
I do think it's going to be.
Thank you, Area 503, for your $5.03 super chat. I see here. I'll put you up as long as the program wants to do it.
Yeah, and I totally agree. And
he says corporations are not bound to international treaty in space, i.e., Outer Space Treaty of 1967.
That is totally. And the reason I didn't want to, it's not that I didn't want to go there, but I do think, like every other bad sci-fi, evil content movie, the reality is that the proxy wars that can be committed by organizations, there obviously there's a good example for those of you who have ever watched The Expanse. I think that covers that well. The idea of people born just in space, not born on Earth, occupying planets or space stations as homes. There could ultimately be animosity or corporations that are trying to make profit at one end. And I mean, that's the example of every other sci-fi novel, is you have a corporation saying, I think that's a plot to Doom, right? They biological weapons on another planet, it goes bad and you got to send in the rock. And, it's there are those examples of stuff like that. So no matter what, corporations, although not bound, are going to end up having agreements, i.e., a lot of large tech companies that apparently have made an agreement about government. I guess I'm always trying to skirt around the whole subject, but the reality is that, yeah, those corporations are always going to have a relationship with government. And what it looks like is going to be, I think, again, is so fascinating, the idea of being able to go to space, but it doesn't get me real excited, like you said, if I got to spend $200,000 to do it. I don't care how much money I got. I don't want to spend $200,000 to go to space.
That's too, I mean, for anybody to even say, let's say blue collar, okay, this is a dream that you have, let me just save up some money, but then you got to worry about, the family life and whatever else you've put time and invested energy into. This is something very unattainable, and right now only for the wealthy. But Make-A-Wish Foundation, you know what? That's not a bad thought, honestly. I think if Richard exactly what they did. Are they putting the extraterrestrial or high technology narrative of secrecy sort of at risk here? As pilots often see UFOs in our skies and mention very little about it, I would imagine if the public at large got into space, people would.
I think we're getting close to it being impossible to hide that. So whether it's ancient humans or UFOs. But yeah, sorry you broke up, but maybe you can hear me still.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah. So I think.
Yeah, that's been the theme.
Yeah. Okay. Good. So then I'll keep talking on it quick, which is just, there's no way to hide it. I mean, unless they want to opaque or do digital windows where they can manipulate what you're seeing out the window. I could see that as an early format, or tilting a space station, even irrelevant to gravity controls, to just if you're an early space spy and you want to look out the window and identify certain satellites or space stations that are military, I think that that's a possibility. Where if you can control what your guest on your space station is viewing, that's a possibility that they're not going to be real space windows. They're going to be a video window, and then you mute anyone's ability to see the Black Knight satellite. That just won't happen, or something like it. So whether it's ancient tech, whether it's alien tech, or whether it's actually advanced human or advanced military special ops stuff, you're either not going to view it, or they're going to, well, it's pretty easy. They can adjust their patterns to fly around it. But for those possible ancient aliens or interdimensional anthropologists that are flying here from somewhere to study humanity, they're either going to continue to do flybys, or they're going to avoid the space station. It'll just be one thing that they have to work around, which they already work around an entire network of satellites and other space junk. I think they can avoid, space Motel 6. We'll leave the space
I
station
don't know if you
unlocked.
stopped talking.
Did I? Can you hear me now? I cannot currently hear Michael. So sorry, we don't usually have these issues. But yeah, I think it would be exciting. I think for all of us out there that are thinking, hey, wouldn't it be great to just get in space and not have it cost an arm and a leg, or could it at least cost as much as well, maybe just the Super Bowl? Yeah. Could I get a $3,000 seat or a $20,000 seat? And really, what's the difference at that point? I mean, I think your $3,000 seat to space would be just as good as 20. It's not like you're gonna have more windows or anything, or that you're gonna have more legroom. I think just purely speculating on safety, I can't imagine the seats, the suits you're wearing, anything being any different than anyone else. I mean, right down to the bathroom facilities, there's just no going around it. There's not going to be anything at all different, I think, for a passenger at 200,000. If there were ability to pretend that there's a price difference in order to create a first class, business class, like an airplane, I don't think that's what's going to happen. It's just not realistic to uh, just to get people into space was the first goal. This is a novelty. I mean, one flight, if we look at the difference between the Wright brothers and the time that different aerial, I live Charles Lindbergh, straight from Minnesota, flying to France from the time that Charles Lindbergh, let's just look at that as an example, from the time this transatlantic flight is done to Paris. And he lived, Charles Lindbergh, and the reason, we had an airport named for him, which is really honestly should be the case still, but people are forgetting their history, that this is a man that not only worked with the US government into World War II, but helped plan the entire flight patterns that we currently fly on. Yeah, there are variations and changes, but for the most part, the way that the patterns across the earth have been developed were done from a time frame of us not being able to fly, to Charles Lindbergh flying across the Atlantic, to that very same man helping foster in through World War II an actual international flight system that includes jets. And that happened in his lifetime, almost not being able to fly, to planning international airports and consistent flight routes for all countries. And it was done by Charles Lindbergh and just a few people. It wasn't done by a ton of people. So here we are with Richard Branson, and whether it's Jeff Bezos or any other private party, they're planning they're going to space, or Elon Musk. We're getting to space, but now the issue is getting back again. And it's not going to be a large group or NASA or a government that's going to get us there. It's going to be these private industries. But what does it look like from the day that, the Orville Wright, the Wright brothers get off the ground and fly, and you're going to move to
one quick trip by a private party in space, we're not starting from ground zero with rockets, propulsion, anti-gravity, even stuff that's currently only available to military. Where our capabilities are, if individual corporations can show a clear path to monetization for technologies the military may have been hoarding since the 70s, there's a good chance
Hmm.
that we can all get there faster. That there could be an international, just like there is for air travel now, that there would be an international scheduling and flight system and planning by the people who get
Right.
there first. And that's exciting. That's Jeff Bezos. That's right now Richard Branson and likely Elon Musk. So it's the people who are setting up these systems right now. And of course, the only reason I don't keep bringing up Elon Musk is because he's such in the forefront of accomplishing. I mean, just because he's putting up all these satellites and this other technology. Those innovations are not to mention military. I mean, that's the other thing. It's Elon Musk is already working with the government. Not that Galactic isn't, not that Jeff Bezos isn't. I think it's more of a joint effort than it is not. But there are
Yes.
technologies that might be demilitarized that are Lockheed Martin. Fill in the blank. It's exciting. You know,
Right.
yeah, we could put together all these little possible like engines, whether it creates a safe flight ship, cruise ship, like you said, carrier, whether it's the space stations itself. I feel like the technology already exists for us to get there.
Well,
But
that's not a concern. That's
yeah,
exactly my concern. Here's what I'm again concerned about. I won't use worried or scared or anything like that. I'm just
oh, I like that.
concerned that that with
God.
what the paradigm that we live in now, at a boy, the paradigm we live in now.
Yeah,
Okay, we are obviously in this bubble as a population. We know as much as we know, and we also know that there is something that exists outside of that bubble that encases our bubble that knows so much more. And we've heard about certain black projects, and I'm going to allude to them for the specific reason that they mention already colonizing and being the forefront of anything progressive in the way of space travel, interdimensional travel, wormholes, portals, you name it, dude. It's been named by so many different figures. My concern now, again, is that if we do start colonizing space on a very aware level, wherein anybody can access it, you can go to the moon, you can go to Mars, and you're starting to do this sort of thing, and everybody's in awe. For some 100, 200 years, as everything sort of progresses up to a certain plateau, everybody's in awe. But at the same time, since they've been developing other things for so long, there is still this black government of shadow, if you will, in respect to certain technology that they're still harboring. While they've released certain things that have certainly blown our mind at that point, there's still so much more, and they are still the ones forging their way into the universe with our name in their mouth, the way that they're doing right now. Just getting into space. That's a big concern for me.
it's true. It's just this does fall in the world of construction, believe it or not just to build the rocket ships and the advanced shiny Star Trek stuff, but to get on a planet, to do the geological, just to do the work to build a foundation or to dig the machinery, the heavy machinery itself, to get Holland Piper.
Oh, sorry, I just wanted to give the consent on that. Yep, go ahead.
Yeah, so the issue is the construction and the amount of manpower it will take to build the very buildings that anyone would occupy. And so to do anything that's going to be beyond just a few people, it's going to take a number of laborers, skilled laborers, no matter how, like the best of the best. Let's take our Apollo example of the best of the best. There's only so many. And if those are the only people available, let's just say it's 500 people in the whole planet based on whatever criteria they come up with, and they go and they build a city, are they going to do it for, if it's going to be, if you need so many people to operate the heavy equipment and to build the space, are you really going to only do it for 20 or 30 or 50 or 100 people?
Right.
And if you're going to maintain, there's a difference between building it, hauling it, getting it there, and even once it's up and running. And let's just say it's built for 500 people. That's going to have to include staff that maintains and repairs and works on it. And in order to maintain and repair and work on it, they're also going to have supplies. Those supplies are going to be part of a shipping network. Someone's going to have to be part of the shipping network. You can very quickly scale out space travel to where it ultimately ends up large. It can't not grow. So if it's going to be limited, well, and again, Area 503 brought it up again, is there are public agreements that say, hey, if a corporation wants to put a satellite up and sell cell phone or satellite TV, they can put a satellite up. At the same time, if fill in the blank individual or corporation wants to go build a castle on Mars or the moon, they can do it, but they got to get there and they got to go do it. And then that right?
Yeah, it's well, all of this, as we talk about it, for some weird reason, I keep thinking about Total Recall. Obviously that this story has a lot of rooting in fantasy, the way that it was put together. But for those of you who don't know, the story was actually originally based on the Montauk chair, believe it or not. So there are ties into that as well. But again, with that in mind, I in sense of a vacation spot, or people that take a one-way trip out to some of these celestial bodies, they get stuck there and are now in poverty, sort of the way you saw the underground scene there in Total Recall. I mean, these are all possible outcomes for what we want to do next. But the truth is, we have to decide and not only collectively make these decisions, but individually decide how we're going to conduct ourselves moving forward with so much responsibility in the way of knowledge and technology, lest we destroy ourselves. And I'll even put in parentheses again, because again, my understanding is that this is the number I've heard, the 7th time we've actually started from scratch, got to a certain point, destroyed ourselves, went back, started from scratch. Now, that's a whole other conversation in and of itself, but still significant in respect to what we're talking about here. Now, before we go, and internet's okay at the moment, but you never know what's going to come next.
Let's roll with it.
Let me ask you the last question here, and this is directed towards you. Out of the 3, okay, who would you rather go into space with given the opportunity? Richard Branson, Jeff Bezos, or Elon Musk?
Probably Elon.
Why?
So Richard Branson, I think everyone has many different facets. I think there are many more Renaissance people living now. I throw us in this category where, I'm not any one thing. I'm not just an artist or a researcher or a writer. I don't just do nonfiction. I don't just, there's fitness stuff I do. There's Wim Hof stuff, meditations. So we're not just one thing. And I think Richard Branson's a good example of one of those people who is well-rounded. He's explored a lot of different businesses and opportunities, and he's done it all very well. Elon Musk may have been at the right place at the right time when PayPal and all that got going. But if it's your favorite,
I wanted to address that when you were done, answering the question. I want to save a couple things.
I was just looking at Gigi Abby Lynn's comment. And Jeff Bezos, I don't follow him entirely. I like everyone have used the empire of Amazon for Prime and assorted other, products. But Elon Musk has for quite a while, the stuff that SpaceX has done, like watching that retrievable rocket, watching what he's developed in tech. I mean, there's a lot more behind the dialogue of, hey, he created a super tunnel to Vegas, or it's not just that he could do it or that he could dig the tunnel. The complexities of the machinery of the mining equipment and the concept behind the tube and the SpaceX launching and relanding rockets, the satellite systems, not everything that Elon Musk, and it's ironically not the Teslas. I'm not, that whole electromagnetic frequency thing, the whole pulse problem. I'm not a huge fan of not having a manual brake. I'm not a big fan of that personally, but I think that the global technology that Elon Musk has been developing, and more importantly, developed in mass. So he has not only developed and produced one satellite, he's produced many, many rockets, many technologies that are in the wheelhouse of being able to create the mass transit to supply, build, run, and the science to continue an operation of something like a large space station, or any space station, or just going to the moon. And I think you could scribble it out probably on a napkin. And it's not like I'm an extra Elon Musk fan, although I would be fascinated to talk with him. So that's where it comes. Is I think that there's enough exploration in new and existing technologies where you're talking about someone who we as just watchers, whether it's on YouTube or whether it's just on the news, we can literally look at what Elon has done and the level and the amount of technology that he has applied to space and the technologies that we are using to communicate and fill in the blank. It is too spectacular to not want to have a dialogue extensively with him or be in those rooms for those developments. It's just endless, the amount of things that are really going on. And I good for Jeff Bezos for wanting to go at it, but that wasn't his core competency in the last 20 years. And it's, again, he's branching out, Renaissance man, trying something new. They've clearly developed their technology far enough along to get out into space. He's about to do it. But so it's not like he's so far behind the 8 ball or anything. That's not the issue. It's just that Elon Musk's mindset towards and the development of all of this, and in the face of and or with and or hand in hand between the U.S. military and or assorted other organizations, means that, yeah, I would like to spend some time with him.
That makes sense to me, and I couldn't agree with you more. Although, out of the, it's kind of funny. I think that Elon Musk does have this altruistic edge, the way that we kind of see Richard Branson. Bezos seems more like he's doing this out of ego or, some other physical motivation. I mean, I don't know the guy, but, this is the persona that these guys kind of give off. Elon, maybe sits in between. I think, when it comes to a certain point for at least two of these guys, money isn't really the thought anymore. It's about the fascination. It's about the exploration of a new frontier. Wherein, with the last one, with the third guy, I think, again, it's something more in the way of financial gain or power control, something along those lines. I don't know. Time will tell. But just to very quickly address what Gigi Abby Lynn had said, by the way, I love your hair. Very cool hairdo. As William, what was it? William Defoe. I always mess his name up. It's something close. It was in The Life Aquatic. He said, I like her hairdo. All right, I like your hairdo. She says, oh, here it is, the subject, Montauk. Well, let me tell you this right now. You're going to be surprised because Montauk was something so far reaching that, I mean, literally every single person that was on this planet at that time and has been since has been affected in one way, shape, or form by what that project had done. Obviously this is a multi-layered sort of thing. And when we talk about the chair, it's something tangible that we can kind of relate to in respect to the story as a whole. But a lot of different stories, if you get into the Montauk Chronicles and you read some of the peripheral writings, let's say the literature that's covered in this, you see these odd similarities and synchronicities that once you get into it, you cannot ignore. Now, here's another thing I'm going to say. I don't make predictions or anything along those lines, but I'm going to tell you what I do see. Hi, Blue Chicken. What I do see is that in the future, this particular project and whatever sister projects that are and were involved will be still noted as part of the significant area of history wherein it got us to where we are. My initial feeling is that when it is remembered on a more collective scale, it's not going to be known or called the name that it is today. So you could go 2,000 years into the future, say Montauk Project. They won't know exactly what that is in relation to the exact event that they still are very familiar with. This is just my thought because, again, how far reaching it was. It's over in what I understand in the way the original project began. There was a looping effect that came back with the energy that happened around 4 or 5 years ago, was the completion of this energy. Long story, long show. We can maybe do on that at some point. But there are some of us here, Gigi, believe it or not, who have ties to the Montauk project, myself included, as unfortunate as that is. And there are memories that are still being pulled out. And man, I could get into that, but if you want to, check that out, go into some of my past archives, and you will find a lot on Montauk there. Peter Moon was interviewed by me as well at one point. So anyway, just wanted to kind of throw that out there without getting into the subject, because you guys know I could really fall deep down into that one, and we're kind of out of time, unfortunately, for the night. So Jared, can you let everybody know where we can find you at notaliens.com and about your YouTube channel? You can tell us about that and what you're planning on in the next, let's say month or two. Let's go with that.
Cool. So, that narrows it down. So it was just on Leak Project, and
you were on Coast to Coast recently, weren't you?
Yeah, and Richard Sirrett's conspiracy podcast. So Richard and I have done a few shows together, and we were together on Coast to Coast recently. That's available in their archives. And then, of course, Not Aliens has a lot of, I try to do embedded links to shows for people to listen to. And in the past, I'll be doing Cosmic Salon again soon, and Everything Imaginable. And we have another show coming up, I would think, in the next month. But then I am also working on that trip to go to the Grand Canyon to do some initial research for us to decide where we're going to climb or ascend or descend to look for some rock cut ruins. I am, of course, trying to post all that. Some of it I post on Not Aliens on YouTube. You can go to notaliens.com, and of course there'll be links. And then, of course, I have a Rockfin channel, which currently it is all in the premium area. I will be posting more on Rockfin. It would be great for you guys to check out Not Aliens. There are free accounts. You don't have to pay. Although if you do pay, there's it's a way to support content providers. That's just a different format. But I have a members area on Not Aliens, and you can always check out exclusive content there if you become a member. It's like, right now I'm running a deal. It's like $39 something a year. So it's really inexpensive, but it's a way to support the channel. And I'm excited to get back out. I mean, we went to America's Stonehenge, and I'm assuming after we wrap up here, I have to give you a post on, and of course, eventually we'll tell everybody out there listening, getting back to Grand Canyon is part of exploring where the GE Kincaid Cave really is, instead of just chatting about how somebody went there once a long time ago. We're going to go. And that's exciting. That's probably the most exciting thing that's coming up. I mean, there's other things, but hey, the internet gods have blessed you with reception, so we should hear something more from you.
Yeah, wouldn't you figure, right at the last 20 minutes of the show, maybe? Oh my God, guys, thank you so much for sticking in with us tonight, through all of this. Of course, as I mentioned last night, this is out of our control. I've seen a lot of you guys acknowledging that, and I appreciate it more than I can express, honestly, because it's very frustrating, being the host over here, hearing very small bits and pieces of the question. You're dropping in and out. Next thing you know, Jared is really the superstar here, holding together the show, just like Dr. J Radio Live did last night when I dropped out. So, thank you, Jared. And of course, thank you, everybody here. Cheers to you, my friend. Lick the bottom of that glass now.
Straight from Simon SL podcast. From I'm drinking scotch from a Scot. From Scotland.
I like it. To me. I mean, it tastes better that way. I understand.
At 16%, everyone, just if you can get anyone from Scotland to send you scotch, it does taste 16% better. Doesn't matter the brand.
So, as a lot of you guys know, I am embarking out to California. We're going to Los Angeles on Monday to meet up with Third Phase of Moon, Rich Giordano from Goofon, Dr. J Radio Live, Apollo Asteria, Michael Schratt. There's a whole list of people, Christopher Peters. We're going to get together, and we're going to be talking to these folks. We're going to be talking to the public at large. We're putting together handfuls of documentaries and episodes for you guys in the future. As Rich said on the show earlier tonight, we're not necessarily focused on the live shows, but there will be times that we do go live when the moment necessitates as much. And I do look forward to seeing some of you guys as we're out there. And of course, everything that comes of the work that we do when we're together. So this is going to be cool. And I want to thank especially all of my super chatters, not just tonight, but throughout my tenure here on YouTube. I want to tell you, a lot of that went back into the trip that I'm taking here, there was a point where the opportunity was on the table, and I said to myself, okay, well, I know I'm supposed to be there, but I have no idea how I'm going to get there. And through your guys' your donations and your super chats, PayPal donations, everything that you've given me, I am able to go out there and do that. And I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for giving me this opportunity so that I may continue to give back to you, not only my experiences, but everything else we talk about and the people that we affiliate ourselves with, making this a much better place for all of us, right through ufology, right through the paranormal, and right through esoterics at large. So thank you so much, Jared, for being with us here tonight. And yes, it will be, I figure we could do a show and we'll talk about it, after I get back from California. Soon after California, within a handful of days, I think about not even 2 weeks, I'll be out in Montauk for a couple nights and 3 days with Wreaking Havoc and Long Island Bigfoot. Specifically, we do have Gary Hootenholler on the back burner. I'm not sure if he's going to be able to join us. He's been very busy with his own endeavors lately, but I do hope he would, because I believe he will be very complimentary to this outfit. So there will be a documentary released on that as well, and it will not cover specifically the history of Montauk and the Montauk Project, but we're going to be focused on other aspects and way of healing, and there's going to be a lot of my own personal experience in this particular rendition. It's more of a teaser for the larger documentary that I'm putting together next year, wherein we are going to have survivors of this project speaking specifically on the healing and what they've been able to do moving forward, the impact that it's had on their lives, not necessarily in the negative respect. We've heard that it's about what you're doing with that negativity that you've gone through, how you're going to help other people after you've helped yourself, in respect to some of these experiences. So just to give you a little taste of what's to come, guys. And again, I thank you guys for sticking in. Jared, I'm going to take you off for a moment. You want to hang back for the time? I will be back there in just a minute.
Sure.
Thank you, my friend. All right, guys. Well, this is the last show that I'm going to do before I go out into the West of the United States. Sorry, I'm still a little discombobulated trying to put it all together tonight, working with that internet. But you know what? We made it through, and no matter what, I stick it out for you guys. I have a lot of fun doing this, but I think that, in honor of the guests and the information that will be presented, no matter what, I'm here. And you guys have been supporting me by just being here too. So thank you for that. Okay. So once again, thank you very much. I will see you out in California. If there's anybody out there who'd like to, pay a visit or say hello, maybe we can make a time to meet up with the guys. Send me an email, darkhourparanormallive@gmail.com, and I will get back to you within a couple of days at the latest. So thank you guys very much for being here tonight. I hope you enjoyed our presentation. There were a couple things that I didn't get a chance to touch on, so I'll have to revisit that with Jared in the near future, but definitely something to look forward to. All right. So without further ado, we're going to get out of here for the night. And just to let you guys know, this may be the 10 o'clock p.m. Eastern time, 8 o'clock Pacific time. I think this is where we're going to sit for a little while. There will be some circumstances where a guest would like to come on a bit earlier, that 8 o'clock time slot. I know that Rich has taken that and he's doing very well with it, and I think that's fantastic. But just to let my listeners know, we'll probably be starting around 10 o'clock Eastern from this point going forward. But as things change, just keep your eye out on the posts as I put them up, and everything will be specified within. So once again, guys, thank you very much. Stay here. Nope, that's not how it goes. What would I say? Keep looking up. Nope, that's not me. Keep your eyes to the skies. Nope, that's not me either. Man, I really need a catchphrase, huh? All right, let's think of something right now. Nah, because some of you guys got to go to bed. I understand. Yep, you don't have to work in the morning, but you got to go to bed anyway. All right, I'll work on that. Thank you, guys. Have a wonderful rest of your evening. Stay inquisitive, stay well, and stay in full question, because the truth will come from us. Ciao.